As you will see, my English is not my first language, so I hope it's good enough to transmit some ideas. So today I will show you a project that is really applied. So we try to promote deliberative thinking and decision making in natural resource management. So the question of this research is about how to promote deliberative thinking decision making in collective action spaces for management of natural resources. So basically, basically collaborative governance establish some kind of mechanism to interact between citizens and the government. And this kind of governance models distribute the power between citizens and people. And it's quite important for natural resource management. However, it's not enough. So we have seen that to ensure successful projects for sustainability, they need more than just a governance model that is collaborative itself. And one of the critical limitations is the lack of experience of people to design and implement scientific and robust management strategies that are based in deliberation and rational thinking. So the central message here is that we need to transit to models of collaborative governance, but at the same time, we need to improve our methodologies to promote participatory decision-making, promoting deliberative thinking. And just, I would like to go more to the details of the project. So some kind of basic conceptual definitions. Deliberative thinking is some kind of dialogue based on arguments, where we think carefully on pros and cons of the reasons behind a decision. It means so in the deliberative thinking, I think really precise about the consequence and the benefits in different dimensions in a decision-making process. So we apply a multi-criteria analysis. This some kind of methodologies that you can make trade-off between multiple objectives, and this kind of methodologies give you some kind of structured decision making to make decisions. And these methods are really useful to compare and prioritize management and conservation strategies. And the fundamental point here is that in this kind of decisions, you can make trade-off between two or more objectives. That means when you are in a situation where you don't have a win-win, so you have to lose in one objective to win in another objective. So we work in Chile. Chile is a relatively small country. We have around 19 million people. However, we are between the most important, between the largest exporter of marine resources in the world. So the decisions that we made for fisheries management have implications for millions or hundreds of millions of people around the world. So we work in some kind of collective spaces. And first, we need to define what means an operational space. And here we are using Ostrom, a Nobel Prize in economy. So she defined what is a collective action space. First, an operational space is a place where reality happens. I mean, the landings, commercialization, process of the resource, and when we eat them. This is kind of the operational space. So in this framework, what happened in this kind of operational space is mediated by a socio-ecological system, when you have biological, ecological aspects, community attributes, and government situations. However, what Ostrom chose is that if you don't have a collective space where people can determine management rules, common pool resources will be deployed. That's what they call the tragedy of the commons. So we need this kind of collective spaces where representative of people can meet and make decisions. And these decisions in this level are rules. So in collective action spaces, I generate rules to be applied in the operational space. So we have a case study in Chile. It's interesting. Chile is a long country, and we have we call the turf system. So we have 1,000 of little parcels in the coast that are managed by the fishers in fisher organizations, and they are autonomous space for management the resource. And at the same time, we have some kind of management plans that enables the management of species or group of species between this turf system. So the turf system is more in small spaces and management plan in large spaces in the ocean. And you can see this some examples. It's just a group of people that meet, that they have to make decisions. And this decision need to be rational, and there are a lot of interest and values behind. So we need to promote some kind of deliberative thinking in these spaces. I will show you just one example. This is the Arauco Gulf. It's a zone in Chile in the central south. This is a lot of indigenous people in this area. So this management committee, they have the authority to manage in this space the resources. Basically, they use this kind of boats, and then you have divers that go down and they take out these resources here, and they land in this kind of docks here in Tubul. And then you have some kind of informal management plan that mostly are women, that they process these resources and they sell to the international and national market. So basically what we did is a multi-criteria participatory decision-making process. So it's interesting because we designed some stages, and in each of these stages, we promote the rational thinking between participants. And what's really interesting, what we found that the people, they value these spaces because they really think that we can put on the table what matters for them in the decision making. So that means that in this kind of decision that we develop, it's not only the biological objective that is important. So we structure something like this. Sorry, it's in Spanish, but it's something like this, where we have a big objective. One is promote the equity, of course, to keep and maintain the stock of the resource and increase the economical income. So, and then you have different sub-objectives, and each sub-objective has indicators. So it's important because before this, the only objective that was important was this. So maintain the landings and maintain the stock. But in this kind of decision-making process, we can make this kind of value true, and we can consider also some kind of social values. In this case, particular case, is promote the equity in the fishery. So then we develop some kind of alternative. So in this case, we develop scenarios. We develop 20 scenarios. Each scenario is basically a concatenation of actions. That in this case, these actions of this group of action is one scenario that seek to impact one objective. In this case, regularize employment opportunities. So we develop with the people, with the committee, 20 scenarios to achieve the objective. So thinking rationally about how we can improve these decisions and how we can improve the result of our decisions. Then we analyze the consequence. That means that we analyze how this alternative impact this objective. And in this case, was interesting because we don't have quantitative data. So we develop some kind of qualitative impact assessment. So we say, okay, if we develop this scenario in the management plan, how we will be. So in this case, in particular case, people say that 50% of the people in the committee think that will be the ideal scenario. But it's interesting because in other scenarios, for example, this one, they develop the scenario, they think that is important, but then when we develop the qualitative impact assessment, we found that most of them, almost 50%, think that if we make this action, will be just like now. So it's not really improvement in the conditions. So it was interesting and useful to check with the people that it's not only about construct scenarios, also thinking about the consequence of this scenario, and we can then select which one are better. Then we evaluate trade-off. I don't have time to go too much on this. Basically, when we evaluate trade-off, we try to understand how much I can lose in one objective to gain in another objective. How can accept decrease in one objective to have an increase in another one. So we apply some kind of methodologies. It's the swing weight method that allows to people to think about objectives and think in the consequence. Let's say if we ask them, for example, really simple, I ask them, what's more important, money or conservation? They could say, look, conservation is more important, or money and health. We will say, look, health is more important. But if I ask him, what's more important, just a little flu, or I know, $2,000, they will say, okay, for me it's more important $2,000 than a little flu. So that means that it's not that values are not important, but we need to think about the range of the consequence to evaluate the importance of the objective. So finally, we have something like this, where we have the 11 objectives, and we can see the level of importance on each objective. Here we have some kind of box plot. So that means that there's some kind of variation, so some kind of dispersion. So for example, in this one, most of the people think that it's not too much important. And here, most of the people think that is important. And here people have some kind of diverse opinion about how important is this objective. So we can evaluate rationally these different objectives. And this is really important because in this stage is when people transparent their values and transparent their interests. So in this kind of method, it's really important that we have complete information. And that means that I know what's important for me, but I also know what is important for you. So in that situation, I can negotiate, I can try to have a fair negotiation and in equal terms, because you and me, we understand what's important for decision making, or what's important for your values. And finally, with this information, we make the decision. We don't make the decision, we propose a decision that the committee has to make, and we use some kind of basic additive value model. But the important here is that we have in this model two things. One is the relative importance of the weighting, the relative importance of the objectives, but also the consequence. So sometimes what is important for you, or what is the best decision for you, will be related with how the objectives are important for you. So in this kind of model, we can integrate the importance of the objectives with the consequence of the alternative. So finally, we have something like this, but this is not the most important. Here I have the alternative, I have the value for each alternative. I can say, look, this alternative I think is better. So I propose to the committee that they should take this alternative. However, really the most important here is the process. What we found is that this was a really conflict situation with a lot of conflict between actors and between the features and the government. And after working 2 years applying this method, this is just a short presentation, we start to increase the trust and alliances, because the people start to think rationally about the consequence, about the objectives, about how the importance of each objective. And so this allows a generation of trust, toward a process. Sometimes I can mistrust among others. Sometimes I don't trust you, you don't trust me, but we can trust in a process that could solve our problems. And that's a way to resolve conflicts. So finally, I would say that the rational argumentative thinking is promoted, in which individual and interested and objective are made transparent in this kind of process. And the last year, published this article. So if you are more interested, please go to this article, and I'm happy to receive an email or anything like that to discuss about this result. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well.
I hope my English was good enough.
Yes, it was perfect. Does anyone have any questions? If yes, please raise your hand.
I was wondering about the role of the facilitator in this process.
Yeah.
And so if you want to scale this up and make it possible that many groups in many situations can do process like this? How do you train so many facilitators?
Quite important, your question. Yeah, it's a key aspect. It's a key aspect. And what we found, so you need to have some kind of charismatic characteristics that allow you to facilitate this process. And actually, what we found is that the government generally they don't have these qualities. So these committees are led by the government, and they have really a lot of stress and painful situations and conflict because they don't have the abilities to promote this rational thinking. So one of the gaps is we need to generate this kind of capacities. But as we understand, it's not just like read a book, no? Read a book about facilitation process and be a good facilitator. As like I say to them, because most of them are biological people, and I say, look, I can read a book about taxonomy of botany, and I can go to the hill, and I never will find the plant, even if I read the book. So it's not that I give you a book about how to facilitate a process. So that's one of the gaps, and it's quite important. And it's not only about it's about your charismatic and your abilities to facilitate this, and also it's about someone that has independency, so people can trust that you will be really objective and you don't support one group over another. So all this kind of process is really important. So thanks for the question.
Thanks.
Okay, then thank you very much. That was the last talk of the session.